And a very special roundtable tonight, too, because I have two very distinguished people in the world of popular music. Michael Jackson, welcome for the first time to the roundtable.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I saw you, of course, on Top of the Pops last night. I was with you on Top of the Pops last night. You're in the midst of a big world tour now, right?
That's true. We're doing a lot of different dates in Switzerland and Paris.
How far into the tour are you?
We started, actually. We're 2 weeks into it.
And you all geared up? You got to pace yourself or something like that, I would imagine.
Yes, we've been so busy. Yeah, rehearsal today.
I'm going to find out about some of the things that you've been doing. I'm glad you're able to make it along to the program. And in terms of global popularity, I suppose the Jacksons are only eclipsed by my next guest's old band, George Harrison. Welcome.
Good evening, kid. Hi, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. And you've had a busy time, too, because you've just flown in from...
Rio by the Rio. Rio start in Rio.
Were you doing anything musical down in Rio, or was it...
I sort of used the excuse of going to see the Brazilian Grand Prix to have a look at Brazil, or a part of Brazil, because I've never been to South America before. In fact, none of the Fab Four have ever been there, which I found out when I arrived, because there's a bit of mania down there. But it's a wonderful place.
I'd love to go there. A country, one day I will go there. Well, you're both in the program. There's so much to talk about, and we'll do that, and also play as many of the new releases as we can between now and 8 o'clock. It's the round table, and our first record up tonight is from Foreigner, who enjoyed great success in America. In fact, this current record's number 20 in the charts over there. It's called Blue Morning, Blue Day. Blue Morning, Blue Day. That's Foreigner, and that's a new single release over here for them. On blue vinyl, not just on blue vinyl, but it's sort of a picture disc as well. And Michael Jackson, I'll go to you first and ask your reaction to that.
I like the guitars on that. It's very strong. I like the guitars on the one you played a film on.
George's, yeah.
Yeah, it was good. Dark Record. I like that a lot, really. I mean, I think it gets your attention in the beginning.
Right. Actually, it's strange that Michael should talk about guitar, working out, because the guitarist is Mick Jones, who was a guitarist in a band I saw you with in New York television a few years ago called Wonder Wheel.
Wonder Wheel. That's right. In fact, Mick Jones, I'm pleased for him that this band is a success, because we first met him in '64 in Paris, in the Olympia, and he was the musical director for Sylvie Vartan and what's his name, Johnny Halliday. And at that time, Mick was like the conductor in the band and playing guitar. And he was with Gary Wright also in, apart from Wonder Wheel, in Spooky Tooth. So I thought the record was very pleasant. And he's a great guitar player.
Yeah, I like that too.
The thing about Wonder Wheel was it was a band, and I've never seen any of you or your former pals talk about, or your still friends of yours, presumably, the Beatles, talk about other bands, but seeing you on television in New York with Wonder Wheel, you obviously were very keen on them. Whatever became of them?
Well, actually, Wonder Wheel was sort of in between Spooky Tooth splitting up and then getting back together again. So Gary Wright formed Wonder Wheel, and then part of that band, they split Wonder Wheel, and then they got back the singer from Spooky Tooth with Mick Jones and Gary Wright, and I forget the drummer's name, but they reformed Spooky Tooth for a couple of records, and then Gary Wright went his own way, made a solo album, which, Dreamweaver.
That's right, and he's appeared on record with you.
And Mick Jones, I don't know what happened to him up until they made the first Foreigner album, which was a huge success
in America. Strangely enough, that never really happened here, but I think that is the record to do it for them. This is Nicolette Larson, and this is a new single on Warner Brothers. It's a Neil Young song called Lotta Love. Nicolette Larson, and in America, that's number 10. It's just been released over here on Warner Brothers Records, and Lotta Love. And George Harrison, you expressed interest in that record before the program.
Yeah, I think she's very nice. She looks nice too. She sings good, and the production is really good. Ted Templeman, one of those producers. I'm interested to know who played the sax on her. Sounds a bit like Tommy Scott. But I think if Stan and Reg, the Warner Brothers, promote that, should be a big hit.
Were you familiar with that song before, or just Nicolette Larson?
Just Nicolette Larson. Actually, my missus did play it to me this afternoon, for instance. So she likes it too.
She's a session singer, not your missus, but Nicolette Nelson.
Oh, yeah. I've never met her before. I never really heard much about her until this album.
What about you, Michael?
I like it a lot. I've heard it lots of times.
I guess so, yeah.
Of course. And I think it has a beautiful melody, especially the parts on it. That thing. It's nice.
Very familiar.
Melodies is obviously, these days, a very important part of your music. I've noticed that the last couple of things have been released have had a very strong melody line that it was not maybe so obvious in the earlier records that you released.
That's true for the singles, but for the other stuff, I mean, it's just, I think melodies are always important. I mean, especially like some of the old Beatles things. I think the melodies are beautiful. I mean, that's what I think make them stay around so long.
Yeah, that's why I like melodies too. The thing that put me off a lot of pop music is the way it's, you can't distinguish what the tune's supposed to be. Actually, I disagree. I think the Jacksons had a lot of melodies. Remember the first big hit that I ever heard was... No? What was that one where it had a fantastic bass line? I'll remember.
The Love You Save,
later.
Something like that.
No, I forget it anyway.
Yeah, that's really important. Melodies. I mean, if you just hum, Here Comes the Sun, or Fool on the Hill, I mean, the melody is so pretty, you don't... I mean, the lyrics are beautiful too, but... I mean, you don't
both songs of yours, are they not?
Not Fool on the Hill, no. That was Paul's song. The other one, that was mine.
And you were mentioning that from an album that's coming out soon, the Blow Away single is taken from a new album called George Harrison. You've got a song on it, cousin to Here Comes the Sun.
Yeah, Here Comes the Moon. I thought, it was the circumstance. I was in a particularly great place when I saw the moon coming up. And I thought, wow, all this and Here Comes the Moon. And then I thought, no, I couldn't write a song called that. They would kill me. But as it happened, I wrote the song, and it turned out really nice. So it stands up in its own right. And any other songwriters around, they have had 10 years to write Here Comes the Moon after Here Comes the Sun. If nobody else wrote it, I might as well do it myself.
Is it a pretty song like it?
Yeah, it is. In fact, it's a very sort of peaceful song. And the problem with mixing it was I kept falling asleep. By the time it gets to the end, it's put me into a dream world.
Well, it's obviously a track that we look forward to hearing from this new album, which should be out soon.
Soon, I don't recall which day. 23rd, I think, for my birthday.
Here's the record that I've been looking forward to playing on the program, most of all, from Van Morrison. It's going to be my record of the week next week. He's been a hero of mine for a long time on the Warner Brothers label. This is called Natalia. Van Morrison, and that's his single release called Natalia on the Warner Brothers label. And as I said, that's my record of the week next week. And Michael, I'll go to you first and get your reaction on hearing that.
What I tell you about each record, I try to be as truthful as possible. And in each song, there's always something I like about each one. I love the melody of the rhythm track on that. Do-do-do-do-do-do. And you do it all through the track. And it's pretty.
Okay. George?
Yeah, I agree. The backing sort of is okay. I think Van Morrison is a great singer, but the song I thought was a bit predictable. It wasn't a very strong song. And that's about all I could say. It was a well-made record, but just a very predictable tune.
Of course, Van's band, them, were around at the same time that the Beatles were playing back in the early part of the 60s. And I wonder if you ever had any kind of relationship with...
No, I met Van Morrison more so when he was with the band, hanging out with Robbie Robertson and the band. And he sang a lot on their albums different times. But I think he's a great singer. But I, just didn't really think the song was that strong.
Okay. I loved it. I want to talk about your forthcoming album, if I can, George, because it's been a while since you recorded an album. 1976 was the last time an album was released here, and that was 33 1/3. And so I should ask you what you've been doing in the intervening period, first in musical terms.
Yeah, well, in music terms, I sort of skived for 1977. I went on strike. I just went to the races, actually, and...
Car races?
Yeah, to the motor racing, and I was just really getting a bit fed up with the music business, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's been a long time being in it, and I just felt like a break, so I took 1977 away from music, and I didn't actually write a tune during that year. I just sort of forgot all about music, went to the races, and then at the end of 77, I thought, God, I better start doing something, I heard all these stories about people drying up, so I thought, well, maybe I'll write a tune, see if I can just write a tune. And I wrote Blow Away. It was a miserable day, pouring with rain, and we were having a few leaks in the roof of the house and all that sort of stuff.
Whereabouts was this?
At home here in England.
England?
Yeah. I live here, yeah. I live here all the time. People seem to think I live in America, but I live here. And so I wrote that song, and to tell you the truth, I was a bit embarrassed by it. It seemed like it was so catchy, and it seemed like I was a bit embarrassed to play it to anybody. I thought, God, it's a bit too obvious.
Well,
and
it's funny because I remember reading that when John and Paul were writing songs for the Beatles and all that output, it was a while before you worked up sort of courage to present your songs in that concept. Was that for the same reason?
No, they wrote right from during school, when we were at school, they wrote a load of tunes, which, were not really that good. Well, a couple of them, I think one of them we recorded on the Let It Be album, One After 909. And that one they wrote, when we must have been about 15 years old, 16. So they had a bit of a head start, but because they did write such good tunes and the Beatles took off, well, it made it more difficult for me as a songwriter because, the starting point had to be a bit, it was already so many good tunes, then I had to try and write better. So I think the first tune I wrote was 1963 as an experiment to see if I could write a tune. It was called Don't Bother Me. It's a grumpy song. It was all right for the first tune, but then it was really a matter of practice. The more you do, the more easy it becomes,
Yeah. And so here you are at the stage today, where obviously you're doing your own solo albums. Michael, I'm going to talk to you about your album, which is doing well, the Destiny album, after we hear another record, which is going to be some rock and roll from Dave Edmunds, who guested on the program last week. This is A1 on the Jukebox. 2 weeks ago, he was in the studio with Charlie Gillett talking about other folks' records, and I know he listens to the program. Dave Edmunds, well, good evening. That's A1 on the Jukebox, which is taken from the album Tracks on Wax 4. And like Nick Lowe, who produces Dave Edmunds' songs, his songs have some sort of familiarity about them. It reminds me of other things.
Yeah, I agree. I like Dave Edmunds, but that song reminds me straight off. I've never heard it before, but it's I want you to tell me how you walk down on me. The Everly Brothers walk right back, speed it up a bit, except for the bridge, different bridge. But it's pretty pleasant record, though, all the same. It's nice.
Rock and roll, I would imagine, played an important part in your early days.
Yeah.
Did you have any heroes that are still with you today?
Yeah, I must admit that the stuff I liked back in the late 50s, early 60s is still the music I like the most now. Eddie Cochran, Buddy Holly, Little Richard, Mary Williams, those sort of things.
Timeless.
Yeah.
What about you, Michael Jackson?
Past the record, or?
Rock and roll, generally speaking.
This is about the same people who said Chuck Berry and Buddy Holly and Little Richard and all that.
You recorded a song, Rockin' Robin, but you've never really gone into recorded a rock and roll number, such as
yeah. I knew I can do some. There's one that's, it's kind of disco, but rock and roll. It's called All Night Dancing.
The new album you're kind of pleased with, I would imagine, because you actually produced and wrote all the songs on the album. There's one song that you didn't have 100% hand in recording, but most of the album you had. This was the first time for you, wasn't it?
Right.
Why this album and not before?
Because it's kind of difficult to get people to believe in you. You have to tell them, I want to do it for once. And some people believe in you, some don't. And finally they give you the chance. And they see what you can do, and then they let you do it.
So you're confident in just going on from here, I suppose, and doing stuff.
Let me ask you a question. Did you guys always write your own stuff? I mean, from the beginning?
Yeah, well, John and Paul wrote right from before we ever made.
How did you manage that?
I don't know. They were clever little fellows. We did record, the first two albums. We recorded about half of the albums were other people's songs. Like we did a lot of cover versions of, like we did Twist and Shout, the Isley Brothers, but we did all kinds of, and some more obscure tunes. We did Money too, like the.
Miss Lizzie?
Yeah, sure. We did a lot of other people's songs. Yeah,
that's right. But it's amazing. The way that your careers have gone, and you've sort of lasted, both of you, through so many years. And Michael, you particularly sort of overcame the initial kind of teenage hysteria and have really established yourself in other areas where you do sort of cabaret rooms and you fill concert halls and things like that, where people will listen and not just scream all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm grateful that there's so many different things that I want to do, and being able to do it is important.
Good. Dave Edmunds, I like the record A1 on the jukebox, by the way. I almost forgot about that. What about you, Michael?
I like the story. I do. It seems like rock and roll kind of. I mean, it reminds me of an old tune when it first kicked off, the style of the music. I like the story. But why do you end with Nowhere? I noticed.
He was saying he's A1 on the jukebox, but it's nowhere on the charts. Which is it's like a nowhere on the charts, I think he said.
Yeah, that's
it's like a sort of country western type idea.
Yeah.
That sort of.
There is a certain amount of truth in that, of course, whereby the jukebox in America, they have their own charts because jukeboxes, you see songs in jukeboxes for years and years, the same songs.
Yeah, it's a good idea for a lyric. Sometimes to write a song is, if you get a good idea, then you're off and running. You can't, you can sit there for hours and it's the initial idea. So that, as a song, is a good idea.
Good. It's 7 o'clock. It's Round Table with George Harrison and Michael Jackson. And here's Jimmy Lindsay. Ain't no sunshine.
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Jimmy Lindsay, a guy who covered the Commodore's record Easy a couple of years ago. And that didn't happen in the charts for him. That's on the Jam record label, which is a new record label to me. Bill Withers' composition, which you, Michael Jackson, took into the charts here in 1972. So it'll be interesting to hear what your reaction is to that reggae-fied version of the song.
It kind of turned, James was mentioning this too, it kind of turned into reggae in the middle of it. At first it wasn't. I mean, personally, I always liked the original version better than anyone. I mean, the one that Bill Withers did, I think it's the most special one of all. But this one is nice. But I like the saxophone. The sax is good.
Okay.
What is the guy's name again? I haven't seen my paper.
Jimmy Lindsay.
Jimmy Lindsay.
I can't tell you much about him because I don't know much about him. George?
Yeah, I don't know anything about Jimmy Lindsay either. I think the song Ain't No Sunshine is a fantastic tune, and again, I prefer the Bill Withers version. In fact, it's very seldom that there's a cover version that's usually better. I mean, there are cases, but not that often. I prefer the Bill Withers version, but incidentally, I like the way it started out much more, and when it turned into reggae, I sort of lost a bit of interest, although it's a pleasant record.
It gets us actually into the field of reggae, because I wanted to ask you both about your thoughts on reggae. For the last couple of years, music critics in some areas have said, well, this will be the year of reggae. There'll be much more reggae-dominated music in the charts. I mean, it's meant a lot more in Britain through the years, I think, than America.
Bob Marley was a big influence, especially in the States, for reggae. I think he wrote I Shot the Sheriff. And then he made another version of it in reggae. And ever since then, they've been into it. With Peter Tosh, he's hearing that Jagger thing is happening in the States too.
I
like it.
What about you, George? reggae ever appealed to you?
Yeah, I like reggae. In fact, the first time I saw Bob Marley, I was so impressed with his band and the show. I went back, I stayed for the second show, and then I went back the next night and saw him again. So Bob Marley in particular, because apart from the musical thing, I mean, it's sort of hypnotical. Apart from that, I just liked the way he looked and the way he moved. He was sort of like he was in a dream. I don't know why.
I remember a few years ago Paul McCartney talking to me and saying that how reggae, he was very, very interested in reggae, and said that it was a much more difficult form of music to play.
It is. It's incredible. It's like like Lord Buckley said, it's just like a jitterbug. It's so simple, it evades me. You know, it is. It's like, it's the hardest thing, really, to play it right. And I decided a few years ago, the way it must have evolved, or it could have evolved, was that they were probably copying rock and roll, or copying the music of the 60s, like we were, you know, a lot of the stuff we did, we were trying to do like other people, but we could never do it right, and it turned into something else. And I think that's how reggae, they were sort of doing their version of what they thought everybody else was doing, and it turned into reggae.
That's right. I mean, there's fun reggae, and there's, I suppose you could say, heavy reggae from the point of view of lyrics that's used as a base off of political and social statements these days. Tell me, are you ever consciously influenced these days by reggae or any sort of other ethnic style?
I tried a couple of times. I must say, not too serious, but I tried to make a tune into like a reggae feel, Crackerbox Powers. But like I say, it's harder than it appears, you know? And the one thing I like a lot about it is the drum sound they always get, like that high, bang, 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 you know, but the top tones, fantastic.
But anything else that you've discovered that we may not know about? What about down in South America?
Down in South America, I don't know about that. Muller Kintyre was a huge hit in Brazil.
I can't imagine that.
But if I'd have had more time, I would have stayed for the carnival. I would have been able to tell you more about it. But I'm not too hip to Brazilian music, except, you know, the mambo and all that sort of stuff.
There's a great Brazilian musician you must hear sometime if you haven't, George Ben.
Yeah. Well, actually, just before I left last night, or whichever night, the other night, I asked the record company and they gave me a couple of big bags full of Brazilian records, so I'll do my homework on them.
Okay. I'm going to play a couple of tracks from a new Eddie Money album. The album is entitled Life for the Taking. It's a new release over here on CBS, and this is the title. Album called Life for the Taking, which Andy Peebles previewed along with Eddie Money last week. Don't forget, Andy Peebles will be on Radio 1 tonight at 8 o'clock through until 10 minutes before 10 o'clock. Two tracks from that album, Life for the Taking, the title, and that one, which I liked a lot, Maureen. And George, you were saying that Money is perhaps not his
just a friend of mine told me he was called Eddie Mahoney, and they took out the H and called him Eddie Money, which is it's a good name. It's a better name than Eddie Money. In fact, I watched him on TV in the States just because of his name. You gotta check this guy out. And incidentally, I'd say, watching him on TV, I enjoyed him a lot. I think he just looks good, and I like his sort of attitude. But out of the two tracks, I was not very impressed with Life for the Taking. That song, didn't grab me at all. And the second song, this one, Maureen, I liked much more. But again, it's not the sort of record, personally, that I would play over and over again.
Currently in the country, Eddie Money is, and he'll be appearing in London for his last dates in the UK this weekend, before he comes back again someday. What about you, Michael?
I feel the same way.
Exactly the same about that. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I could ask you then, if you can think, it might be a difficult question, when you find time to listen to other people's records, who you like to listen to these days?
Me? Well, yeah. I must say, out of the popular music thing, I still like, probably most of all, is Ry Cooder. And he's never really... I think he's quite popular in Europe, but he doesn't...
Cultish.
Yeah, he is sort of cultish, but I like him. He's, I think he's the best guitar player, and I like the way he draws his... he never writes his own songs, but he always draws from crazy material and, gets songs which in a way his album's always very personal sort of music, although he never writes a tune. So I like, I'm a big fan of Bob Dylan's and, I like Eric Clapton, those sort of people still a lot. And, but my favorite music still, and I think is always going to be classical Indian music.
Still.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about your association with India in a little while. What about you, Michael? Records, other people's songs?
I like all kinds of music, but as far as popular music, like you said, I like Stevie Wonder.
Who incidentally has an album out here in a couple of weeks' time, which is to the Secret Life
Secret
of
Life of
France.
France, yeah. I heard some of that. It's so good.
It's supposed to be very different from other things, but it's from the movie. And he's also got another album coming out before the end of the year, so there'll be 2 Stevie Wonder albums before the end of this year.
Is this on a film soundtrack?
Yeah. I don't know much about the film, but one of his associates I saw.
Get our record that quick before he comes out. It's good, isn't it?
Eddie Money is, getting back to Eddie Money, you were talking about his live performance. Again, maybe I should talk about live performances. George, you appeared on stage in Guildford recently, I understand, with...
you heard? Well, it was Eric, Eric was doing a concert tour, Clapton, and he, it was the last show in the tour, and, they always go a bit silly on the last show. So I was there with Elton watching the show, and before you know what happens, they just put a guitar on your neck and shove you on, and it's been so long now of, with that sort of thing, it's easier just to go on. It was good fun, really. It was great.
Are you planning to do any tours to kind of promote or play songs from the forthcoming album?
With a band? I don't know. At the moment, I don't have any sort of band. I don't really have a plan to do that. Although there's part of me which would like to do some concerts. I don't know. Maybe I will do that later. The only problem being, though, that by the time it takes to get a band together and rehearse, it's pointless just going and doing a couple of dates. You might as well do a world tour. And at this point in my life, I don't really feel like touring the world,
because you've got
sort of overdosed on that. Yeah, I like to stay home, watch the baby grow, and plant big flowers in the garden, and have a peaceful life. And that is sort of like going back to the craziness. Also, I don't trust myself, because at the drop of a hat, I'll party. And like I did on the last tour, I come off stage so wired up that I want to boogie all night long, and then I'm wiped out. Like at the end of the first week, I'm ready to drop. That is good. Maybe I'd go take a straitjacket and a doctor with me.
What about you, Michael? I mean, you work an awful lot. How do you avoid the kind of pressures that must be socially on you when you come off stage? Let's go to a party, or why don't you come and see me, or this or that. I mean, what do you do? Do you keep a very strict discipline and you kind of go to bed at the end of each concert, or what?
That's it. I just go to sleep.
Before
Watch TV.
take a sleeping pill before the last tune.
That's it. You said it.
This is Diana Ross, some more friends of yours, Michael. Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, and Stevie Wonder, and a new single on Motown called Pops, We Love You. It's a tribute record to Berry Gordy Sr., and this was recorded just before he died.
That's what you're saying for in our lives.
On Motown, that was Diana Ross, Marvin Gaye, Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder. What a lineup. Pops, We Love You. Almost as good as the lineup in tonight's round table. George Harrison and Michael Jackson. I mean, Michael, obviously you know a lot about Motown records. Would they have all been in the studio together recording that song?
I don't think so.
I hadn't heard that record before, and it felt pretty good.
George? Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, the song by any one of them would have been great, but with the four of them, it's sensational. I think they were there together. At least, I think Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson were.
Yeah.
Because the way she come in with singing Smokey a little bit, it just sort of, it would have been a bit hard doing that sort of thing and contrived if they weren't all together.
Well, you arrived on the scene, Michael, through Motown Records, and that's where you found sort of success around the world, and then you left Motown Records, and you're now on Epic Records here. Tell me about the days with Motown. Are they affectionate days that you remember Motown Records by?
Well, the early days of Motown are really, they're kind of like classical days. We were so young at the time. I remember everything. When we first performed for Barry Gordy in his big estate in Detroit, the poolside, all the Motown stars were there.
Was it an audition that you did?
Yeah. When you're looking at all these great artists staring you down, from the Tips to the Supremes, and they were at that performance, and Diana came over special, made a special thanks, and she congratulated us and told us she wanted to be a special part of our career.
And of course she was. What songs were you doing? That interests me. Were you doing some old Motown hits, or did you have original things you were...
We were doing some James Brown stuff, some old Motown hits. We were doing It's Your Thing by the Isley Brothers.
How old would you have been then?
Around 7.
7?
Yeah.
Gee. Oh, wow. The thing is that it's Motown, you think of, as you said, a family thing, and that's, all the artists knew each other really, really well. Was that the case then?
It's really true.
But what happened? Because things obviously were not so good, otherwise you would have left, presumably. You wouldn't have left.
Right. There were a couple of things, and I hate deals and contracts and all that stuff. Most artists do. But, like I said before, we always wanted to write our own material. We have our own publishing company and production company, different things like that, and we finally got a chance to do it. We never got that chance on Motown to write our own songs, which we always wanted to do.
There's maybe a parallel with Apple, I suppose. That was a very family type thing, wasn't it, with everybody? We would get the impression that it was in the early days.
Well, but the thing is, we always had the freedom to do what we wanted, and that's I think the main difference that Tamla Motown, up until like Stevie Wonder really turned it around, because up until then he was, everybody was expected to do the same sort of tunes, and it was all the same production. It was like an assembly line. In Detroit, it was like the motor cars in a way, and they made really good records, but for the artists who wanted to, be very individual, I think, I could imagine it'd be quite hard. For us, it was more the thing to, Apple was just really our own identity sort of thing, away from, although we were still with EMI, we wanted to have some other artists on the label. Although we were at the EMI up until 75, I think, it was like the Foreign Legion. But I think if we'd have had a contract that was shorter, we would have left EMI much sooner. Just in order to, because we signed with them when we were very young, not 7 years old. We were about 4 years old. We signed with them until we were about 43.
The Apple days, though, you, as you said, you just brought in talent to expose to your own label. I associate Mary Hopkins very much with Paul McCartney. I associate actually Hot Chocolate with John Lennon, because I remember that was a chant. Which of the artists were Jackie Lomax?
Well, I produced Jackie Lomax's record, and I did Billy Preston, Doris Troy, and
Doris Troy.
Yeah, and I did a sort of one-off record with the Krishners, the Krishna Temple.
Yeah.
Actually got in the top of the pops. I got on top of the pops. It was great. Although with the short heads. Well, that was the second one. They did the Hare Krishna mantra.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think with Jackie Lomax he was from the old Liverpool days in a band called The Undertakers, and there was a lot of other friends of ours who were always saying, "Come on, why don't you, record Jackie, give him a break?" But
and you did. What happened to Apple? Is it a simple story to sort of a fable somewhere?
It's the most complicated story ever. It's still there. Apple is more or less just a company that's employs lawyers. Still, it's like I don't know. We've been trying to dissolve the thing for years, but it's very difficult. It's very complicated. It's like War and Peace.
Okay, we won't get into that, but into some more music. Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and a Bob Dylan song called You Angel You, which is out on the Bronze label as their new single. Manfred Mann's Earth Band, and that was, as I said, a Bob Dylan song called You, Angel, You. Well, of course, Manfred Mann has chosen other Bob Dylan songs and Bruce Springsteen songs before and successfully taken them into the chart. Michael, did that appeal to you at all, that treatment of that song? I don't know if you're familiar with the original version, but...
Could you ask George first while I think about it, please?
George, yeah, well, you're a friend of Bob Dylan as well. How do you react to that?
Yeah, I prefer Bob's version, to tell you the truth, but, I mean, that's like a really strong record, you know. To tell you the truth, I've no idea what's a hit and what isn't a hit these days, but that, you know, that was quite pleasant, but as I say, I prefer Bob Dylan's version, nothing personal, Manfred.
Okay. Michael?
I could never fall asleep on it because it was so, you know, up and out. God, I don't know what to say.
Okay.
What was the name of it again?
You, Angel, You.
And the group?
Manfred Mann's Earth Band.
I never heard of that.
It was interesting to get Bob Dylan's reaction on this. Actually, I wonder, would he be aware, or would you be aware in the same kind of category of celebrityhood, I suppose, of other people recording your songs and taking them into the charts? Do you?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure if it gets a lot of radio play and, you know, and it does anything in sales, I'm sure he'll know about it. I mean, that's really nice as a songwriter if somebody else does the songs. Even bad versions, you know, it's nice, just the idea. But Bob is probably not impressed because it takes a lot to impress Bob Dylan. But, you know, I mean, everybody's recorded his tunes.
Yeah. What about your songs? Is there anybody that's recorded any one of your songs that you are particularly happy with the way they did?
Yeah. One in particular, there's quite a few. I mean, I've been a big fan for years of Smokey Robinson. He did Something. Actually, when I was writing that song, in my mind, I was thinking of Ray Charles singing it. As it happened, the song ended up with over 150 cover versions, but when Ray Charles did it, I was really disappointed, except for the middle. The bridge to it, he sings great, but it was a bit of a corny sort of way he did it. But the one that really made up for all of that was James Brown. I didn't realize James Brown did it in 1972. He redid Think as a single, and on the B-side he did Something, which it's fantastic. I've got it on my jukebox at home, and it's just unbelievable, you know, the way he sings it. And the arrangement is really beautiful.
Michael, you were going to say something.
You know something?
Oh, yeah.
I know that. I'm surprised. That's one of my favorite ones. I thought Lennon and McCartney did that.
Everybody thinks that.
They do, don't they? I don't know you wrote that one. Beautiful.
It's 24 minutes before 8 o'clock, and here is an exciting sound that Paul Gambaccini has been playing on his American chart show on Saturday afternoons, mainly because the Blues Brothers album is #1 in America. This single I'm about to play from the album is number 16 in the charts, and this is their version of a Sam and Dave song from many years ago, Soul Man.
Yeah.
Blues Brothers, and a single from America's #1 album called Soul Man. Actually, the Blues Brothers have other identities, and George, maybe you can tell us a bit about them because you're quite friendly, are you not?
Yeah, John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, they've been for years on a show called Saturday Night Live. And also, John Belushi is Ron Decline, who was the Ruttles manager. And Brian Fry, Dan Aykroyd, was the one who turned down the Ruttles. So I was surprised, although Belushi has always been quite famous for his impersonations of Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
So he's obviously a potential serious singer too. So I thought the album was going to be maybe a comedy album, but obviously with Dick Dunn and Steve Cropper and Tommy Scott and all those people playing on it, it's good, very good.
They sound like they mean it.
Oh yeah, they do. They seem to mean it. I'd like to hear the rest of the album sometime to see if they get, into comedy.
Right. You mentioned the Ruttles, and I'd like to obviously come back to that in a moment. But to you, Michael, Steve Cropper and Duck Dunn also played on the original hit version of Sam and Dave's Soul Man, and you expressed delight when the record first went on the turntable. Did you enjoy that version of it?
Yeah, I like it very much. I like the song. I think the song is so good. Sam and Dave did it first, I think. And I was reading the credits. I don't know Isaac Hayes had anything to do with the writing. His name was on it.
Oh, yeah, with David Porter.
I was surprised. I think the song is great, but I don't really like the mix of it.
It's a live recording.
Oh, it's really live?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not bad for live.
Okay, I was just saying it because my favorite part is the guitar. And I didn't hear much of it. That was why I really...
What about those Stax records of the late 60s? Disco is very, very big today. For me, in my heart, my favorite dance music will always be Sam and Dave, Eddie Floyd, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas, Otis Redding, those sort of records. Do they mean much to you? I always got the impression that Stax, as a sort of a label, was much bigger and better known in this country than really all over the entire U.S.
Not really. All those people you named are really great people to America, too. Especially Rufus Thomas and Isaac Hayes and the Staple Singers. I think they're all great.
What about you, George? You obviously will be aware of the package tour that we're still here through the late
The
60s.
Stax, yeah, I liked all the Stax artists. That was good. And, you know, they always seem to bind the Stax records together by using Booker T and the MGs as backup bands, which is a fantastic band. Very nice.
What about the Ruttles, then? Because you were involved, or appeared in the Ruttles film, which has been shown on television a couple of times here, and was very, very popular and successful, and the album as well. Where did that all come from? Did you have a hand in the actual concept of it? Because you're...
No, the concept was Eric Idle's, really, and although once he got writing, I must admit I did show him a few Beatle films, just so that he could, have more material to draw from. But the Ruttles, I loved the Ruttles, just because it was a way of liberating me from that whole thing. The Beatles was sort of, okay, it was a good thing at the time, but it goes on and on and on, and people get too serious about it. And I think the good thing about comedy, you can make jokes at anything. If you're a satirist, you can joke about anything and get away with it. And so it was a good way of, just having a laugh out of the Fab Four. What about Dave Nasty and...
the names. What about the other fellas' reaction, Paul, John, and Ringo? Are you aware what their reaction to that Ruttles?
No, but they've never spoken to me since.
Talking about comedy, I must ask you about your involvement in the forthcoming Monty Python film, which is Brian of Nazareth?
Well, yeah, I think it's called Monty Python's Life of Brian, although some people think maybe it should be called Brian of Nazareth, but it could be called Monty Python's Life of Brian of Nazareth. Well, I get involved with it because, actually, it's probably, say, on the beginning of the film, Bernard Delfont doesn't proudly present Monty Python's Life of Brian. I mean, I get involved with it when they backed out of the film, EMI. Because really, I'm just a Monty Python fan. I wanted to go and see it at the movies, so somebody suggested to me maybe I could figure out a way of raising the money for them to make it. That's all, really. But it's very funny, and it should be at your local cinema during the summer.
Sure. Can you tell us a little about the plot? Is there...
Yeah, well, it's nothing to do with Christ, really. What it is a guy called Brian who gets born at the same time as Christ in the manger just across the road, and it really just follows his life. And he's, he's a bit of an idiot, really.
Okay. That's Monty Python.
How everybody sort of was into Messiah mania, they mistake all kinds of things as signs and start following Brian around thinking he's the Messiah.
Okay. I look forward to that in the summer. A lot of things to ask you. Michael, I'm going to ask you about your motion picture, The Wiz, after we hear something from Cat Stevens. That wasn't, of course, Cat Stevens, but this is his new single release, which is called The Last Love Song, and it's from the album Back to Earth. Cat Stevens and The Last Love Song from the album Back to Earth. And it's been a long time, almost as long as between your last album and your forthcoming album, George, that we heard from Cat Stevens. And what do you think of that one?
Yeah, I like Cat Stevens a lot. Actually, earlier when you asked me who I like, you know, I mean, Cat Stevens is being a consistent, you know, a person that I've enjoyed. I mean, I always like his voice. He's got a lovely voice, and he always seems to have style, class, you know, good melodies, good production. And also, I think in his life, he's been through a lot of, you know, heavy ups and downs, and I don't blame him for taking 2 years to make a record. Yeah, I like him a lot.
An artist, I suppose, is entitled to breaks and rests.
Yeah, sure, because people just hear your record, you know, they don't know really what's going on in your life. And I think Cat Stevens had a lot of heavy things going on in his life, and I think it comes across in his music. He's very sort of emotional sort of singer. I like that a lot.
Michael?
I feel about the same way. I've always liked his songs, like Morning is Broken and Moon Shadow. His voice is so, you get into it, it's really dramatic, the sound of it.
It's certainly an identifiable sound that he's got. It'd be interesting to see if that charts now, because of the singer-songwriter sort of period that we went through, of which he was certainly one of the kingpins of that period in the early 70s. It's been a long time sort of coming since we, as I said, we've had an album. And I would like to think that will chart for him. And I would like to think that he'll tour again, because he's magic on stage. He had a bunch of magicians last time I saw him, instead of a support act, you know, quite see some magic tricks. What about your movie then, Michael, The Wiz, which American audiences have been seeing now for the past few months? It's out here very soon. And tell us a little about that film, The Wiz. It's based on The Wizard of Oz, is it not?
Yes, it's taken from the play, The Wiz. It was all filmed in New York, 6 months. Half in the studio, half on location. It's from the book Alfred Baum, and Diana Ross plays Dorothy. I play the Scarecrow, and Nipsey Russell the Tin Man, and it's more of an updated Wizard of Oz. I mean, like in the original one, like the Flying Monkeys are flying, like our Flying Monkeys are Hell's Angels with big glasses, and their bodies are made into the bikes. And
so a bit of a comedy in many.
Yeah, it's coming in a series, and it follows more of the original book, what L. Frank Baum was really trying to say. But he was trying to put across a message in the story. A lot of people call it a children's story.
Yeah.
But it's really heavy. It's a heavy thing.
Can you simplify basically what your conception of that message
Well,
is?
what he was saying, like, for instance, the Scarecrow, who's looking for a brain, he has all the brains in the world. He just doesn't have the belief in themselves to realize it. He's looking for something he has already. And it's millions of people today, geniuses, walking around doing the same thing. They just don't have that belief in themselves. And that's what he was trying to say by using the Scarecrow, Tin Man, and Lion. So Aesop's fable, you good people.
It must have been a lot of work for you dressing up as a scarecrow.
Yes, 3 hours of makeup every day for 6 months. Just makeup.
With the straw and all that, it must have been fairly warm inside.
Yeah.
But you're obviously happy with the result.
Yes.
I look forward to seeing the film. And of course, the song we're familiar with, Easy Down the Road, which came from The Wiz. This is Inner Circle. We've mentioned reggae before, and this is a great new release on the Island label from a band that have just moved to this label.
Record, yeah. Actually, that was Inner Circle, eh?
Yeah.
You know, I like the sentiment. Everything is great if you've got the eyes to see it, you know. It isn't great, actually, if you don't have the eyes to see it. Like, if you look at England at the moment, it's really down in the dumps. It's awful. But it is great if you can tune into it and plug into the divine consciousness, everybody, and Krishna and all that.
Are you still involved with Eastern religion?
I am, yeah. I mean, it's the sort of thing that it's just, to simplify it, it's just like Michael was talking about the words, and he's saying that the moral to the story is that this guy has actually got everything he needs. It's just that he doesn't have the confidence. So, as a parallel to that, within all of us is this divine consciousness that we need to learn how to plug into. And there's a little story about the farmer who lived for years in little shacks and then moved into the city, and he remained in his house in the city in the darkness because he didn't know that the plug in the wall, he could plug the light in. And so it's like that, everything is great, except you have to plug in to to realise that. And so the sentiment is nice, but I thought the record was just as good as the dancing in the disco. But for me, it's just a bit of background music.
You mentioned that very often cover versions are not as good as the original versions. You're very much obviously with the original version of this song. How does Lenny White's version grab you?
I like it a lot. I think it's fantastic. It's still not as good as the original version, though. I still prefer the Pat Paul's version, but it is great. I like that a lot. But again, it's like a lot has to do with the song. Sometimes, you know, if you get a good song, whoever does it is good. And you know, the best thing around is it's how good song is concerned forever.
So thanks very much for being with me here tonight on the round table, and I look forward to hearing the fruits of your efforts in the past couple of years anyway, on your album.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. Michael, what about Cleo?
I'm very good.
And what about your tour dates? Quickly, I've been in the UK.
I'm going to Brighton tomorrow. And I'm going to